who said it, why did they say it, what were their motives for saying it, what's their relationship to you, what's their relationship to the future, what possible benefit do they have convincing you of X, Y, and Z. So these are the kinds of critical questions and critical thinking exposures and experiences that we insist on being part of all of our classes, that really allow our students, that when they're no longer students, 30 years from now, to be members of a functioning democratic society.
Do you think that the politicians who are really going after liberal arts-based, humanities-based education, do you think they look internally at their staffs, at who some of their best staffers are? Because I would think they would be surprised to learn they didn't all major in political science. Right.
Well, I think introspection is not really a strong suit among people who are, flinging arrows at the humanities, because very often they themselves have humanities backgrounds.
Yeah.
They among the crowd, I'm not going to be a defender for the Ivy League here, but among the crowd of people in the current political climate who are criticizing the Ivy League, a very high proportion of them are products of the Ivy League.
Harvard graduated senators.
Exactly. So I don't know that personal lived experience or the experience of the office. I think in some ways it's political grandstanding. I think that probably many of the politicians and leaders who are leading the charge against, or who are calling into question humanities and liberal arts, are not convinced by their arguments, but believe that it's an easy argument to attract attention and to attract a following, which is probably true. An interesting voice against that sort of clamor against the humanities has been Mike Rowe. Mike Rowe is known for his work in the television program Dirty Jobs.
Yeah.
He has quite a bit to say on liberal arts and the humanities, because he himself is, I don't remember exactly what field he made. I think he majored in philosophy. But he himself is convinced of the need for as many people as possible in society to have a well-rounded, humanities-based, liberal arts-based education. But he's also very adamant that career and technical education deserves a higher place in the hierarchy of American society than it does today. For decades, and here's, I think, where part of our criticism of humanities comes, and part of this is valid. For decades, our education system has been built around the notion that you either go to college or you're not going to be successful. And so throughout, in K through 12, that's the message. You need this to do high school. In high school, it's you need this to do college. We've seen our career and technical. So when I went to high school, I took 2 years of agriculture. I took 3 years of industrial arts. I took a year of typing. It was a very, I would call it well-rounded in the sense that it was not just academic coursework.
Wood shop and mechanics and typing and home ec, which was cooking and sewing.
Yeah, all of that was available, and it was a very prominent part of my high school's curriculum.
Requirement.
Exactly. And increasingly, that doesn't exist anymore. In California, for example, there are very few high schools that have auto shop as a large program.
Wow.
And yet, there are tens of thousands of jobs requiring competence in auto mechanics.
Yeah.
So I think for decades, this push away from career and technical education,
the devaluation of that.
Right, has left kind of a void. And so now that void is being addressed. And in some ways, we have a similar void in some of the STEM fields. And I think sometimes those two are conflated. And politicians, leaders often say, well, we need less of what we've been doing, often pointing to the humanities and liberal arts, and more of what we don't have enough of. and often pointing to career and technical education and STEM fields. Well, back to what Mike wrote, talking about him, he had an interesting quote that he said recently, that it's not that we need more philosophers and more welders. We need more philosophers who can discuss Nietzsche, and we need more, we need more welders who can discuss Nietzsche, and we need more philosophers who can weld a straight bead.
I think, something you said, I was going to go back to the mechanical engineering major. I would think that if we go back to, I'm dating myself now and how I was educated, that when I went to college, and I majored in journalism and political science, neither one is humanities-based, but my overall requirements required me to have, and we at CSUN required a very broad-based GE requirement, so that even if you're majoring in physics, you still have had classes in your college. I think, and I know you agree with me, but I'd love for you to expand this a little bit more, is that foundational experience in liberal arts classes, even if I'm majoring in physics and specializing in nanophysics, or I'm majoring in computer engineering and then specializing in something very specific, industrial engineering and computers, something like that, I still think that philosophy class I had to take, or that literature class I had to take, or that ethnic studies class I had to take will help make me a better person as I go forward, if not necessarily in my field. We keep talking about education as a means to a career, but we're not talking about education as a means to be a better person.
Right, and that's another key aspect of what we do in the humanities is, it helps, especially when we talk about the identity-based disciplines, but really all the disciplines, they ask critical questions of society and critical questions of ourselves. They help us understand ourselves better and therefore be able to react to and adapt to any changes either in our own lives or in society. And I think this is something that's true not just for careers, but also how we are as citizens in a democracy.
That's what I wanted to get at. The role of a citizen. Keep going. I didn't mean to interrupt.
No. As citizens, so we do not know what challenges our democracy will be confronted with in the year 2046, in the year 2056. But yes, definitely students who are in our classes right now are going to be engaged participatory members of that democracy in the year 2046 and 56. So what we do now is lay the foundation for, first of all, having them, empowering them to know that they have the right and indeed the obligation to ask questions and to not just, well, somebody told me this, or I read this somewhere, or
I read it on the internet.
So who said it? Why did they say it? What were their motives for saying it? What's their relationship to you? What's their relationship to the future? What possible benefit do they have convincing you of X, Y, and Z? So these are the kinds of critical questions and critical thinking exposures and experiences that we insist on being part of all of our classes, that really allow our students, that when they're no longer students, 30 years from now, to be members of a functioning democratic society. Because if we have a citizenry that doesn't ask those questions, then it's a citizenry that will be easily swayed by the most forcefully delivered argument, or by the loudest argument, or by the argument with the loudest advertising budget. And that's not how democracy is supposed to work. It's supposed to be based on thoughts and ideas and engagement and debate, and then a decision on the collective good for all.
I need to have a foundation in humanities so I can be a good citizen.
Exactly. And that's something that, that doesn't appear on the diploma. that doesn't help them get their first job or second job or fifth job, but it's an essential and key part of our society. So the way, as our society is set up and as it functions, it depends on having a critical mass of individuals, participatory individuals, who understand the need for these kinds of questions. If that critical mass falls too low, then the democracy doesn't function properly.
And it needs a critical mass of people who who aren't afraid to ask the question and know how to ask a question.
And for many of our students, this is the first time they've ever felt like they've had a voice. In class, our professors ask our students to challenge what they're reading and what they're hearing, including what the professors teach them, and welcome that debate and dialogue and discussion, because that is the foundation for a habit. It's not just acquire this knowledge about how, let's say we're in Chicano studies. It's not just acquire this set of knowledge on historical dates or figures of, Cesar Chavez walked for 300 miles from Delano to Sacramento in 1969. That's important, but it's the why, and that was a form of challenging. That was a way of challenging authority. That was a way of challenging an authority that was not in alignment with the goals and values and needs of a community. And it was done so in a manner that drew attention to that challenge, to that question.
And I would guess, and I'm just going to pick in California at the moment, our demographic is such now where Latinos make up the majority of the state. That number is not going to diminish. I don't care what they do at the border. That number is not changing. It's only going to increase. And so now California's citizenry is diverse and Latino, but it's also Asian, it's also Black, it's also Armenian, it's also Muslim, it's also a variety of things. It's queer, it's women. Mm-hmm. And they are the state's citizens. They are its voting populace. They are its taxpayers and its business owners and its workers. It's all of those. They are all of those things that make up a community. I would think I would like to have a citizenry that was thoughtful, that didn't mind being provocative, and I don't mean provocative by titillation. I'm talking questioning, and that's not a lemming. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And that's what your college does. And particularly with your identity majors, you're showing those people they have a role. Because historically in this country, they've been marginalized and excluded. But by teaching them their history and teaching them to question, even as they're learning their history, you're providing an avenue to see. I don't want to use the word empowerment because it sounds very hokey and sometimes, but you're providing them with knowledge that empowers them to question. Well,
in my role as dean, I don't get to meet with students nearly as often as I like to. Mm-hmm. But I did meet with one of our students here not too long ago, and who commented on one of the reasons why they enjoyed classes in our college so much. And it was that, in her words, this was the first time I ever felt listened to. And I said, okay, tell me what you mean. And she told a story about how, her personal experiences that shaped how she saw the world and her beliefs and her views were largely different from what she saw as the mainstream views. And in class, she had the chance to present and discuss on a particular topic that was important to her, interesting to her. And the professor listened, her classmates engaged, and her views and her explanation of her views were validated in a way that she had never, ever before experienced or felt. So I think that happens very often. Maybe it's in class presentations, maybe it's in just discussion, maybe it's in a paper that students write or a project, but that validation of one's lived experiences, I think, is an important first step because we all have lived experiences and they're all meaningful, deeply meaningful to us. And these lived experiences often overlap with each other, especially when we talk about identity. And to really get into who we are as a people, as a state, in the state of California, we have to first firmly understand who we are and understand and know that we each and all have an equally valid place in this state.
Wow. I just can't understand why a head of a higher ed institution would then dismantle a set of programs. They even have it just majoring in French or German. Teach me to see the world without blinders.
I think so. I think a lot of the attacks on the humanities are misguided action for the sake of action. So earlier I talked about West Virginia and their cutting of the foreign language programs. So the University of West Virginia has a huge budget deficit. That's the problem. Mm-hmm. The solution of cutting foreign language programs is really only a drop in the bucket of their problems. It was a tens of millions of dollars budget hole, and the amount of savings by eliminating the foreign language department was very, very small, not even less than 5% of the total deficit. So it would be kind of like, imagine a fruit tree, fruit tree during the summer. It's fully fruited, it's fully leaved out, and then you knew a windstorm was coming. And you're like, oh, there's a windstorm coming. I have to do something to protect this tree from blowing over. Let me cut down these two pears that are within easy reach. So that's the metaphor of low-hanging fruit, right? You cut down the two pears because they're easy to reach. And then people look at you and they say, oh, that person took action. Good job. You did something to protect that tree. But the reality is it doesn't help. It doesn't help overall. And now the tree is less than.
I think as a parent, now, my kids are in grad school, but when they were looking and shopping for an institution of higher learning, they were going to college, while I was focused on their major, when I looked at the institution, because remember, I'm the one writing the check, I didn't just look at its offering in the major. I looked at the overall offerings of the institution because that helped me weigh the validity, the value of the educational experience it had to offer. Even if the student, my child, did not major in, didn't take French or whatever, the fact that it's broad offerings, solid fun. It doesn't need to offer everything under the moon. No institution can offer everything under the moon. Doesn't need to offer film. We offer film at CSUN, but we did, you know what I mean? It didn't have to, because that wasn't my child's interest. But it had that good, solid foundation. Then I knew I was getting my bang for my buck. Mm-hmm. I was writing it, so I know they're going to get a well-rounded, powerful education. Most parents, I think most college students, when they're looking at an institution to go to, they're looking beyond just the major. They want to make sure that when they leave, they are well-rounded citizens, well-educated. They can think for themselves, not for somebody else, but they can think for themselves. And if you dismantle some of those, what I see as foundational offerings, like language, you're almost devaluing your institution.
I think you are. And I think Honda gets it, and I think Toyota gets it. They're hugely successful, global, multi-billion-dollar, multi-decade companies. Both Honda and Toyota invest, I don't know if it's hundreds of millions of dollars or some huge amount of money in race cars.
Yeah.
Honda does Formula One, Toyota does NASCAR, and other racing events. They don't make money from that. They lose money in that. But when somebody is shopping for a car, a nice little commuter sedan that's safe and quiet and comfy and not too expensive, the fact that Honda won the last Formula One. I don't know if they did or not. I don't, but let's suppose they did. If it's known to that consumer, it matters. And if it's not known to that consumer, whenever they go into the dealership and they see the posters of, oh, okay, yeah, I'm buying a Civic, but look, Honda also does that. That's really cool. They must really know their stuff. And that's kind of how I think universities are as well. With languages, there are a bunch of different languages. With sciences, there are a bunch of different sciences. It would be irrational and illogical for a purely short-term, non-focused business decision to look at, let's say, the offerings in the sciences and say, biology is by far the most popular science. We just need biology. We don't need astronomy or geology or physics or chemistry because they just don't have the numbers. I think that would turn away a lot of students and it would devalue the entire institution. Yeah. The same thing with languages, the same thing with humanities. Instead, we have so many different identity-based programs. We have a new one that we're starting. We have a program in disability studies. That's a minor that has just been accepted. It's starting up this year, and we're expecting it to be a big and prosperous and hugely relevant program. And rather than, to CSUN's credit, rather than saying, because of our limited resources, let's consolidate and just have one other studies. Instead, we're expanding and we're really focusing on, we're really broadening our focuses to as many different areas as possible. So disability studies is something that had been, not ignored, because we've had disability studies courses and options on this campus for quite some time, but it's never been a fully fledged academic program, a minor, until just this year. Well, this is huge because CSUN has more self-identified students with disabilities than any other CSU campus. Also, approximately 70 million Americans self-identify as having a disability. It's hugely important for us to be able to study disability studies as an academic and as an identity area of interest.
One of the things what you were talking, I remember a million years ago when I first started working here at the university, I had a student. Her name was Memoria, and she had grown up in Norwalk. Turns out she had one of my old college classmates as one of her high school teachers. And I asked her, why did you come to CSUN and not, for instance, Cal State Fullerton, which is closer to her? And she said, oh, because CSUN has the first Chicano Studies program in the country. I go, oh, you're majoring in Chicano Studies? No, but I knew I'd be welcome there. I knew I would be welcomed at CSUN, and I wouldn't have to worry about not feeling I belonged.
Oh, wow, that's a perfect example. Uh-huh.
And I've never forgotten that, because by offering, in this instance, the identity studies, but by offering a curriculum that is inclusive, you've rolled out the welcome mat to a lot of people, haven't you?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And the humanities, the College of Humanities or liberal arts, if they're at another institution, they are the foundational studies, so to speak, of higher education. I mean, you took philosophy and literature or history and all that stuff. If I went to Cambridge 200 years ago, my education would be humanities-based, so to speak.
Exactly. That's all it would have been. If you would have studied in Coimbra or Salamanca or Oxford or Cambridge 500, 600 years ago, it would have only been this type of education. And I think that's important to know, even though today often, we have this hyper-modernity, or it's new, it's therefore better. A lot of things that are new are better, but not necessarily. And I think it's important to note and recognize that humanities and liberal arts stands the test of time. And by that, I mean so some of our disciplines are asking the same questions. that they were centuries ago, and in the same manner, and opening up that critical inquiry. But some of our disciplines are asking the same kinds of questions, but in completely different ways. And often it's our identity-based disciplines that are doing that. They are inviting critical analysis, identity-focused study in ways that had never before been asked. For example, Central American and Transborder Studies. We're the only department in the nation, we're the only university in the nation that has a department of Central American and Transborder Studies. And that's partly because of where we are. The largest Central American diaspora in the United States is in LA County in the Los Angeles region. So it makes sense that it's one of the LA region campuses. But here at Northridge, we're the campus that has stepped up and said, this is an important and valid field of study. And it's really, it's a department that's grown quite a bit and really left its mark. But in going back to the centuries and centuries ago, it's hard for us to think of, we can look back 600 years and kind of imagine what human life or even higher education was like 600 years ago. But I think it's hard to do that 600 years in the future.
Yeah.
I think change is so fast and so rapidly accelerating that we don't really have any idea. But I think it is valid to compress that time scale and think of it in terms of decades. So we can look 60 years in the future, 6 decades in the future, and kind of have an idea of how things will be vastly different, but also recognizable to us today. I don't think 60 years from now the world will be unrecognizable, but I do think it will be vastly different. But what I am convinced of, what I'm confident of, is that what we learn, what we know, what we teach, and what we ask, and what we do in the humanities will be relevant 60 years from now. And I don't think there are a lot of disciplines that can say that, especially in disciplines that are likely to be affected by things like artificial intelligence.
That's right. Thank you, Dr. Reeder. It's been a pleasure talking to you and exploring. And I thank all of you for joining us today as we explore the value of a humanities-based liberal arts education. Until next time.
All righty. Thank you, Carmen. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for diving into the discourse. You can watch and listen to more of our podcasts on the CSUN Conversations website and become part of the CSUN Conversations community.